My crew to roll tape. All right, guys, let's do this. It's just me. Sorry. Hey, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Cafe BTW, a gaming morning podcast on April 1st. Yes, it's April 1st. Can you believe it? We'll get into that. But at the bottom of the screen, we have our guests from the wonderful Reliving Retro. Is it a show or a podcast, guys? We got Yizer. Did I say that right?
You said it right.
Yes,
Nailed
Yizer
it.
and Kyle from Reliving Retro. What's up, guys? Good morning. Thanks for
How's it
joining.
going?
Good morning. Good morning.
How
Thanks
are
for
you?
having us. And to answer your question, it is both a show and a podcast.
It is
Yeah.
both a show
Yeah,
and
it's-
a podcast.
It's everything or anything you need it to be.
I love that. Well, yes, I see Nito or Rich in chat says, is this an April Fool's stream? This is definitely an April Fool's stream. We are definitely not streaming right now. But anyway, really excited we're back. I know I had a week hiatus. I was gone last week, but always love having guests. We're going to be doing a topic today, taking a look back. We've done it a little bit in the past, but I'm excited to talk to these two gentlemen because they have some cool things around the SNES, around their content. But we're going to be going down a little bit of a casual look back retrospective of the Super Nintendo, which I have some interesting perspectives as I grew up. Have some stories. But before we get started, guys, I always like to go back in time with you both. I want you each to tell me something from your childhood that you think sparked your love of gaming today. Who wants to go first?
Yizer, you can go first, buddy.
Yizer, you're up.
All right. I think earliest memory of like playing like a lot was I used to have sleepovers with my cousin Caitlin, shout out. And we would
Caitlin, shout out.
fire up the NES and we would play Super Mario 3 or Bubble Bobble like all night long.
Oh, that's a callback. I didn't
And
think you knew
also,
about Bubble Bobble.
That's
sleepovers
a fun game.
were a nostalgic part of like playing video games as a kid, like staying
Hell
up
yeah.
late at night with your friends at sleepovers and stuff like that. What's your favorite console you think growing up? What did you like the most?
Oh man. I love my GameCube, I think, dude.
All right. All right.
You know?
Yeah. That's a good one. Kyle, you got something to share? You got a story?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say that the story that always is like the first one that comes to mind is when I was a kid, I looked underneath the couch. It was towards Christmas time-ish, and I saw a box under there and I pulled it out, and it was a Super Nintendo box.
Okay.
Like the whole console that came with Super Mario World and stuff like that. My parents were gamers, so we didn't really have an issue with video games in the house. They owned an Atari and a television way before I was ever born, including like an NES, all that stuff. So one like Christmas, I looked under the couch and saw a Super Nintendo box under there with Street Fighter 2. And they were opening it and playing it every night when we'd go to bed before they would wrap it up and put it underneath the Christmas tree. So so the Super Nintendo is actually for sure the console that got me into gaming, and that memory in particular is just a very fond one I have.
Yeah, and I mean now as a collector and being a part of this retro world, the Super Nintendo is highly regarded as, one of the greatest consoles ever made.
Mhm.
Before we get into that, though, I want to ask you guys, let's talk a little bit about, how did you both get started in, I'm going to pull up your YouTube here. How'd you guys get both started in deciding, like, let's do some content together? And I've been on your show before. We did this awesome episode about Fable, which I had a great time, and I want to thank you guys for having me as a guest, and I've been meaning to have you both on this show, so it's really good to have you here. But talk about, how did that get started? You guys seem like you were, like, best friends growing up, I'm assuming, right? I mean, it seems that way.
It would seem that way.
Or is that not true?
Well, we met more in like high school,
Okay.
and we were pretty good friends in high school. And then after we graduated, we kind of separated a little bit. And then once I got married, I actually started doing this thing every year called Beer Olympics, and I knew Yizer would probably be into it, so I invited him to a Beer Olympics. And since then, we've been really, really good friends again.
Yeah.
Nice. Did you guys play a lot of games in high school and stuff like that?
Not really, actually. That's the weird part. The whole reason why the show started is because I have another podcast with one of my good buddies, Travis, and that is more of a sports related podcast called the Trav and Rigney Show, if I could plug that.
Oh,
And
dude, I didn't know about that. That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. So I have another podcast called the Trav and Rigney Show, and like I said, it's more sports related, but in non NFL season, because that's our favorite sport, so that's kind of where we that's kind of where we all of our content kind of relies on the NFL. But in non NFL season, during the off season, we do a lot of like different things where we do like brackets of like favorite cereals and favorite Christmas songs, stuff like that. Yizer is on that show quite a bit. So initially we were talking about doing, I was like, I would love to do a show where we play like an old video game and like talk about it and stuff like that, just because he was talking about Chrono Trigger one day, and I was like, oh, I've never gotten to it, but I need to get to it eventually. And I was like, if you like RPGs, dude, you need to try Earthbound. And so he's like, oh yeah, I'd never heard of it. So that was pretty much like the start of the show, is that we wanted each other to play these two games, and we haven't gotten to either one of them after a year of the show yet. So we'll get there eventually. But that's basically how it all started.
That's awesome. And I didn't know about the sports thing. If you need a guest during football season, let me know. It's been something like I secretly have wanted to do, is do like a sport podcast.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
nothing against the Jets, influencers on YouTube. I'm a big Jets fan. I feel like I missed the boat. I had this thought about 3 years ago. Maybe I should do a Jets oriented show, and I feel like I missed that boat. So if you ever need a guest on sports stuff, I'm a huge football fan.
Well, I mean, to be fair, man, you have a really cool TikTok account called,
Oh, that's
is it
right.
called New York Football Jets? Is that
Yes, I secretly. Well, I don't like. A lot of people don't realize it's me, but yes,
Yeah.
I do. The New York Football Jets on TikTok. It's a nostalgia look back on the New York Jets, and I will say this: it's both the good moments and the bad, because you got to have both, right? The bad
And as a Jets
moments,
fan, there's been plenty of bad.
yes, but the bad moments are like kind of like, they're culturally fun and whatever. But yes, you're right. I sometimes forget that that's me. I myself forget I have a sports related social media account.
Well, it's really good for what it's worth. So I
Thanks.
wanted other people to know about it.
Thanks. And I could always share that on we could talk about that another time. But yes. Talk now. Tell me about what's going on now in your content. You got this very much related to what we're talking about. What is this this journey you guys are doing with the SNES? What's going on there? Talk to me. Talk to us. Tell us.
So essentially, I made an initial purchase for about $300, and I would like to try and sell all those games and see if we can try to build a Super Nintendo collection. We're not necessarily going for like complete SNES, because at this point in time it's like next to impossible with how expensive all that stuff is. But it's really just how good of a collection can we build just based off buying and flipping games. And we're far from the first YouTube channel to ever attempt something like this, but
Sure.
I've always wanted to do it since I sold off all my SNES stuff like 7-8 years ago.
And what is it called? You guys did this whole polling thing. It's the SNES Quest.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's called the SNES Quest,
SNES
and
Quest. SNES Quest.
Yep. And I sent out a poll on Andy's retro game community on
Shout
Twitter.
out.
So if you're not joined there, definitely join there. Yeah, because those guys helped me out a ton with, just
I know. I made you feel bad when you posted on Twitter and you didn't like shout us out. I was just being a jerk. Like
Oh
I
no,
usually
no.
am.
No. I more just was like, oh man, like I was gonna like tag you guys, but I didn't know how to tag like a gaming group.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still don't even know if like that's a thing you can do.
You can't tag us. You could just you can share posts in the group.
Yeah, for
like
sure.
people can see posts, they just can't unless they're in it, like interact or
Right.
whatever. Anyway,
Yeah,
keep
because
going.
I was like, if I retweet it, will that show that it came from the community? I had no idea.
It's fine.
But yeah, no. So regardless, they helped out a lot with having suggestions for the name, and then I took some of the better ones, some of the ones that I felt like got like the most likes or whatever, and then I put those 4 in a Twitter poll, because Twitter, for some reason, you can't put more than 4 things in a poll. But yeah, so I put those 4 things in a poll, and then SNES Quest was the winner.
I love it. I mean, it's a perfect name. I mean, we were talking off the show, the Super Nintendo, unfortunately, is this like overly priced console. I mean, and I mean
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Like, sure, you know, its value, it does meet that value, I guess, but it's really hard for people to want to, you know, buy some of the most important games are very pricey. I mean, you got your Chrono Triggers, your Earthbounds, like ridiculous prices.
Yeah.
I remember when Earthbound was maybe like $40, and I thought that was crazy. Now
Mhm.
it's 500, you know, maybe more, maybe 400 ish. Like that's ridiculous for a loose
It's
cart.
insane.
It's
So
insane.
much, yeah.
So
And it's not even like the top of the mountain, you know what I mean? You have like your Haganes and just other very, very obscure titles that I'll probably never ever get,
yeah.
which I'm okay with because I'm like, you know, the
Yeah.
completionist part of me is I think is dead. I don't think we need that.
And by the way, shout out Will followed you guys on TikTok, Lost in the 80s and 90s.
Oh, appreciate it, man.
You
I
just
actually love
gained
your
one.
content.
You gained one follower. Isn't that amazing?
Oh,
The
nice.
stuff
One
that
more.
the stuff that happens on this show is unbelievable.
Love it.
But thanks, Will, for supporting them. All right, so before we get into a little bit of the retrospective look back, we've got to do news. So this is big news, guys. The return of the Sega into the console market. The Sega Saturn console is set to make a comeback in the gaming industry. Did you guys hear this? It just happened today. The Saturn is coming back. Sega is making consoles again
It happened today, right?
right now
Oh,
on this
man.
day.
Do we believe it?
I don't know. I made this. It's a fake. It's a totally fake article. But I did have AI write the article. AI wrote an article that says the return of the Sega,
That's cool.
iconic Sega console, the set make a comeback in the gaming industry. In a surprising turn of events, Sega has announced its plans to re-enter the console market with the revival of the iconic Sega Saturn. The move comes after years of speculations and rumors about Sega's intentions to return to the gaming industry, and it seems that the company is finally ready to make a comeback.
If
This AI shit is out of control.
yeah, it's like the Chat GPT.
Yeah,
thing.
I asked ChatGPT write an article as if the Saturn was coming back into the industry. So I tweeted this. You guys might know I'm a huge Sega Saturn fanboy.
Yep.
I thought it was I have to do something April Fool's related. I did look at what has popped up on April Fool's today. Among Us came out with some like ridiculous thing called Among Us Horse Mode.
That sounds great.
Overwatch says, say hello to flying tanks and spring-loaded kicks. Check out a very serious patch notes to see the updates of all of our heroes' abilities to kicks in arcade mode only. I don't play Overwatch, so don't really care.
I played it a little bit when it first came out, but I haven't since.
So Sonic the Hedgehog announced on Twitter today, the Sonic social team proudly presents The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, a brand new Sonic game available right now on Steam.
That sounds fun.
That sounds fun. HyperX Cloud 20, which is HyperX is like peripheral company. They cooked up this headset so you all can stop yelling at us to stay hydrated. So I guess it's like a water
It's
headset.
just made of water.
That's cool.
Then Razer came out and says, put on your best game face with the Razer, the world's first shaving mouse powered by Razer.
I'd buy it.
We're big Razer fans over here.
Sneak Energy, what is that? Sneak Energy, innovation in energy drinks is here. Try our fast-acting Sneak eye drops and feel energized inside. So energy in eye drops.
I mean, that's where you want to put them.
So this time of year is always fun. I feel like there's been some really good April Fools with the gaming industry, especially with the jokes they make.
Yeah.
Those were okay. I wasn't that impressed. I'm sure there's more out there. Because it's so early in the morning, I'm sure things haven't been announced yet that aren't real.
Usually a bunch happen in the NFL scene as well, with like teams trading people and stuff.
Oh,
like
really?
That, so,
Oh,
yeah, that happens quite a bit.
But you know what is real and is not an April Fool's is E3 is dead. Officially, just 2 days ago, the famous E3 show, which has been around since 1995, and the last time they did the in-person event was in 2019. Obviously, the pandemic. They wanted to make a big comeback this year. You know, this time of year in June is huge for the gaming industry. It's when they make their big announcements, when all the gaming publishers talk about upcoming games. What do you guys know about E3? Was it a big part of your lives, like seeing all the E3 announcements through the years? Like, what do you guys think of that? The fact that it's probably going to be dead for real now. What do you guys think?
So you want to go first?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would see, the clips and shit online, but I never like followed it to the T like that.
Kyle, did you?
When I was in like probably like middle school and then like the beginning of high school, probably I followed it a lot more than I did more recently. Only because like more recently I've gotten out of modern gaming, more or less,
Yeah.
really kind of just focusing on stuff I could get on my PC or Switch stuff. And obviously, and a big part of the reason why E3 is dead is because Nintendo does these directs, right? So
Hmm.
I don't have a PS5 or the new Xbox. I don't even know what it's called, Xbox Series, whatever.
Series S,
Um,
X.
yeah, I like Xbox. They got to work on their names. I can't deal with it. Um, but as far as like modern gaming goes for me, I'm pretty fixated on the Switch and then whatever I can get on Steam, essentially.
Hmm.
So I haven't paid attention to E3 in a while, and I think Nintendo kind of started the whole trend away from E3.
Well, look at this sexy guy. This sexy guy's been going to E3 since 2012.
Oh,
So,
damn.
so for
It's
me,
awesome.
so for me, it does hit me hard in the heart,
Yeah.
because I remember the first time I got into E3, my buddy was working for BioWare, and they were
Okay.
they were releasing one of the new what the hell is the game? The sci-fi game. Why am I blanking on it?
BioShock?
Not BioShock. The other one. Oh my god, I'm just blanking. Screw it. I'll remember later.
What
But
is
he had.
BioWare? I remember that they do
Oh my
they do
god.
they do games.
Yes, they do games. Why am
They
I
do
blanking on
games
my
for
own?
Borderlands? I don't know.
Not Borderlands. Mass Effect. Sorry, Mass Effect.
There you go.
Woo! How
Okay.
did I forget that? So they were doing Mass Effect, and he snuck me into E3. Back in those days, it was easy for you to show up at the convention center, and he would give you like someone else's badge and throw it over. And that was my first time in there, and that was in a
Wow.
time when it was very much an industry event. It was very private. You couldn't get into E3 unless you worked in the industry. There was no
Hmm.
consumer, and I was blown away. It blew me away. And this is when Microsoft was there, Sony and Nintendo, and everybody was there. E3 had a big booth once you walked in. And as you can see over the years, it's really been a part of my kind of career in gaming. And at the top right here, this is at the Nintendo booth. I was producing a package and I was interviewing people on the floor. This is me and Jeff Keighley. I produced on his show, who used to do this show called E3 YouTube Live. So
Wow.
That's cool.
for me, it really hits hard that it's gone. This one up here was the Bayonetta. I think it was Bayonetta 2 was coming out on the Wii U, and they had the Bayonetta girl there dressed up and stuff like that. This is me and the
Nice.
Fortnite guy. This is in 2019. Right before, it's like crazy, like to think that right before that, the pandemic was coming a year later, But yeah, it's sad to see it go, but I think we're just entering a new age, a new time, and it might not have a lot of connection to a lot of people that didn't you would see the trailers like you said, but it
Mhm.
really I'm really sad about it because being in LA, I'm literally 5 miles from the convention center where it is. So
Oh wow.
um,
I could imagine like I would be upset about it if I went every year. If I was used to going every single year, I'd be like, "Oh, dude, this sucks." You know what I mean?
yeah,
But being
it's
so distanced from it, I'm just like, well, it makes sense with all like the directs that everybody's doing now that they would just be like, "No, this is easier."
yeah. Well, anyway, moving on, and thanks guys. I like to do a little bit of current events, so like to talk through that. But let's talk about the Super Nintendo. Before we get into it, what are your guys' personal connection to this thing? And I'll share mine after you guys. Yizer, you want to go
So,
first? Or Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, we had one in the house growing up. I didn't play it a ton, but I mean, every time I got a chance to, I would I would try to get on there and play, but I wasn't very good at games back then. So I would play for a little while and be like, fuck this, I quit because I suck kind of a deal. But yeah, I've gotten to appreciate SNES games through emulation a lot though
There you go.
recently. Yeah.
yeah. Well, for the show, you've played a ton of SNES
Ton
games,
of
right?
bangers too.
Yeah. Yeah, we've gone through quite a bit of good SNES games on the show so far.
Hmm.
And Kyle, what about you? What's your like kind of like history with the console?
Well, as I said before,
Oh, I guess
I
it was
I
very
found the
much.
console.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found the console under the couch. So I very much grew up with it. It was always my favorite console. I had the Genesis at the same time, as well, but I was always a Super Nintendo kid. You know what I mean? I very rarely transitioned over to the Genesis to play that. My Nintendo was always hooked up. And I just remember like specifically like playing games like with I remember playing more games with my parents than I do with my siblings, which is kind of weird. But I guess my little brother, he was 3 years younger than me, so he's probably like a little too young to play games at that point, where I was like 5 or 6 and he was, a baby or whatever, something dumb. And so I'm
Dumb
playing,
baby.
yeah, like I remember like very vividly playing like Super Mario Kart with my mom and my dad, or like Turtles in Time with my
Mm.
mom and dad and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean it's super nostalgic, and it's always been current for me. Like even when like the GameCube came out, I would have my Super Nintendo hooked up on a TV.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, it's the one console that has always like stayed relevant for me throughout my entire life.
For me, it's really interesting, and I do want to read really quickly. Will in chat said in 1991, I moved. My first friend I made had just got it, and F-Zero and Pilot Wings. Man, I was
Mhm.
hooked. Boca Tao said bust a move on the NES, and also Will said his house had burnt down, and they were buying replacement stuff. He got his when he got his NES. Wow.
Oh,
For
that's sad.
me, it's really interesting. So obviously, I grew up through the generation. So I had just gotten a so literally my brother and I had rooms across from each other in the hallway. I had the Genesis in my room. My brother had the Super Nintendo in his room. I kind of after the NES kind of moved into Sega. I became kind of a Sega fanboy. I started really loving the Genesis, but I would go into my brother's room and play Pilot Wings and Mario Kart, and I still
Mhm.
have these like vivid memories. My brother had this like toy chest, and I would sit on the toy chest with my back against the wall with his little CRT television, and me and him would be playing battle mode Mario Kart, which blew my mind for that time. Like, wow, was that amazing? For the time, and I must say, even though I was kind of a Sega guy, we had the console wars happening in our own house, right? But I still loved and appreciated the Super Nintendo. It wasn't until later that I really like later in my life that I really kind of went back to the Super Nintendo because I really pushed forward on, after the Genesis, I literally like stacked them a thing to a transformer. I got the 32X, I got the Sega CD, I kept
Yeah.
going, and my brother was still playing the Super Nintendo. But man, looking back, the Super Nintendo is so well revered, and it's just such a good system. Vanessa says in chat, Nintendo forever. Will says it's funny how the toy chest can be such a large part of your youth in stories like this that you wouldn't trade for the. I know you're right. That's why I had to bring it up. Sitting on the toy chest, like I vividly just still remember that. But anyway, guys, let me read a couple things about some history here. So, obviously, before it came to America, let's talk about how it all started. The Super Famicom was Nintendo's 16-bit home console, and it's the predecessor to the Super NES, which was released in Japan on November 21st in 1990. The console launch was a massive success, with retailers selling out of stock within hours of release. Fans were eager to experience the console's new and improved graphics and sound capabilities, which were significant upgrades from the predecessor Nintendo Entertainment System, Famicom or NES in America. Alongside the console release, Nintendo released the popular games like Super Mario World, F-Zero, boosting its success. But then, a year later, it finally released in America in 1991 to follow the release, and it did very well, obviously, in America. At its launch, it accomplished by a robust lineup of including Super Mario World, F-Zero. The console immediately was a hit, selling over 300,000 units in its first day, quickly surpassing its main competitor, the Sega Genesis, in sales. The Super NES would go on to become one of the best-selling consoles of all time, a legacy that continues to influence us today. Does that seem accurate?
Yeah.
Now,
Hell yeah.
I don't want to forget the UK. A year after the US, it came out in the UK in 1992, and it was released in April 11th, 1992, following the console success in both Japan and North America. And it also sold 200,000 units in its first few months. Not the first few days, but still did pretty well. And
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about you guys in the UK over in the pond over there. Don't think I forgot you guys. Um, so what were your guys' perspective of the jump from 8-bit to 16-bit? Like, what did you think? Maybe you guys didn't have I don't know how your connection with the NES was, but this was a big jump in the industry at this time, right? We were going from 8-bit to 16-bit. What do you guys think of that jump? Do you think it was a crucial jump in the kind of like the course of gaming history? Because it's very, very crucial moment, I think. What do you guys
Oh,
think of that?
for sure.
Definitely.
I mean, I don't think at the time I realized, right? At the time, it was just like, oh, cool, new Mario game. You know what I mean? Because I was like 6, 7 years old. So I was just like, whatever, new Mario game, dope. But looking back at it, I don't know how you can like look at the Super Nintendo games and then compare them with the NES games. And I mean, it's a huge difference. The 16-bit age just ages so much better than the 8-bit, in my opinion.
Yeah, it still looks great.
So
Yeah, and it's the most like emulated era, really. Like a lot of these like newer games that come out in a retro feel, it's almost always like a 16-bit type of feel. You know what I mean? And it's like that because it still looks good.
yeah, 16-bit is a nice jump. And I think when we think of like, when you see people making like pixel art and stuff like that, it's always looks like kind of like a 16-bit aesthetic.
Yeah.
And it's really pretty. So Will said in chat, my brother had a TV set at the end of his bed. Under it, we had a shoeboxes of NES games. We sat at the end of the bed side by side playing it all the time. What a nice memory. I love that. Let's talk about the specs. Let's get into some details. Okay, so the specs. It was obviously 16-bit. It had a custom-made processor, improved graphics, sound capabilities over its predecessor. Maximum resolution was 256 by 224 pixels, displaying up to 32,768 colors. Custom graphic processor unit, GPU, to generate graphics and special effects. Maximum of 128 kilobytes of RAM. Doesn't sound like a lot, but back then, might have been.
Cruising.
64 kilobytes of video RAM for smoother gameplay and faster loading times. And this is also very important. Advanced sound hardware for high quality music and sound effects. So it also had a pretty awesome sound card. Nintendo was very good at making sound cards. The Game Boy sound card alone was a pretty good sound card as well. Someone in chat said 16-bit has held up the best of all retro. Anything past 16-bit can be tough to play.
I agree with that completely.
So have you guys ever seen a lot of like the commercials and all those like really like this is pretty much like an hour video I found on YouTube of all the commercials that were happening around the Super Nintendo, because it kind of leads into the marketing around this time, right? The marketing around this time was very. Go ahead, Kyle.
Well, no, I was just gonna say that I don't remember them as much as a kid. Like certain commercials to me like stick out, like, oh, that's like a core memory. Like the Crossfire commercial for some reason is just one that like will forever remain in my mind. But a lot of these like Nintendo ones I don't really remember, but since then I've seen a ton of them and they look so cool. I wish video game commercials like felt the way that they feel now, and they just don't.
Do they even have them anymore?
They kind of do.
Not like it used to be. And also you think about all the video game magazines with the awesome adverts that they had in them. Like everything was very visual, and I can't think of one commercial in the modern era right now that I remember. I feel like maybe in the mid 2000s, it's kind of like the last time I remember, like Jonah Hill did like a Call of Duty commercial, I think, with I don't know, like I can't remember, and it's kind of sad because it's just kind of the way it is now. And now all I think we see are trailers on Twitter, right? When a game is announced, there's no like cool marketing behind it. But to note, I wanted to talk about two games that we have to talk about. One of the greatest side-scrolling games ever made, platformers in the history, is Super Mario World. Honestly, one of the best, if not the best, side-scrolling platforms. What do you guys think of this game? What did it mean to you? Any connection to it?
Well, this is the game that made me love games. I think it's safe to say that if anybody here has checked out our show, just a couple weeks ago, actually, we covered Super Mario World. We had Lithium from Nintendo Collecting. If you guys are familiar with that YouTube channel, they came on, and we talked about Super Mario World, and Super Mario World is amazing. It's so amazing that I gave it a perfect score across the board. Spoiler alert.
Why not?
Uh,
Why
yeah,
not? I
I
mean,
mean, I
deserves
got
it.
I got a little killed for the, a 5 out of 5 stars in story, but I just couldn't give this game anything other than perfect. It's a perfect representation of how well a retro game is aged. I mean, if you look at like TikTok and Twitch now, so many people are still playing this game, whether it's
Yeah.
the original copy or Mario Kaisos. It's all still in the Super Mario World, I guess, like system, like the way that it runs. It's it's amazing. I don't know. What can really be said about Super Mario World that hasn't already been said?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I
And
recommend the Game Historian does a really good retrospective on this. And shout out to
Yep.
Bill from A Gamer Looks at 40 podcast, who actually was on the show quite a long time ago, and vice versa. What's up, Bill? Welcome to the chat. Were you guys on Bill's show?
Bill's been on our show.
Oh,
He is our Mariano Rivera. He closes every season with us. So
he's your
we actually
Mariano.
just got done. Yeah, we actually just got done recording a show with him last night about Power Stone 2 for any
mm.
Dreamcast fans out there. So that'll be up on Monday.
Yeah, shout out to Bill, and I can't wait for A Gamer Looks at 40 A Gamer Looks at 50 podcast, and then 60. As he ages. All right, so another important game that we have to talk about is A Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. So,
Oh, yeah.
what do you
I
what
mean,
what?
You take this one, buddy.
Yeah,
this game, so I had, dabbled in it back in the day. Like I said, I didn't play on my SNES too much, but well, a few months ago, probably we did it on the show
Yeah.
and played all the way through and beat it on the Switch. And this game has, for sure, like GOAT status. This game is incredible.
it's and what was it? When did they do the remaster for this? I forget. That wasn't too long ago, right?
They did a did they do a remaster? Or they
Or
did like the Link Between Worlds for the
oh,
3DS.
right, which was kind of like
Oh,
kind of like a loving, what do you call it, like homage or
Sort of
whatever.
like a is it was it a I had never played it, to be fair, but
I never
I'm not
played it
sure if
either.
it was a sequel or if it was a reimagining.
Link
or
Between
I'm not,
Worlds, yeah. Link
yeah,
Between
I'm not
Worlds.
sure exactly because I never played it. I'm not
yeah,
a
no.
huge Zelda guy. I get a little bit of heat for that too on the show, but
I'm with
um,
you. I was never a huge Zelda guy either, honestly. Like
I
I love and respect it, absolutely, 100%.
yeah, I want to love it. You know what I mean? We did a like a yearly recap, like award show of all the games that we played. We gave out awards, and Link to the Past won Game of the Year for our show, which just makes sense, even though I technically like I wouldn't have put it there myself, but I can agree that it's a masterpiece, right? But it's just
Mhm.
not a masterpiece for me necessarily. It's really strange how I can feel that way, but it's true. I
Yeah,
don't know.
you and I are different. So action RPGs are like my jam,
Yeah.
and you're that Super Mario boy.
I'm a big platformer guy, yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoy the platformers.
So going back over to the console wars, because this was a huge time for that, right? And
Yep.
you had commercials that directly, like Nintendo does what Genesis does what Nintendo don't, right?
Yep.
Literally in the title. And this is a good example of the Sega Genesis. This is a great commercial where he's literally telling you straight up, directly, that the Genesis is better than the Super Nintendo. Now, I pulled up some facts. The Genesis boasted a faster processor and better sound hardware, while the NES offered superior graphic capabilities. The two consoles competed fiercely for the market share, with each company promoting exclusive game titles, accessories to entice gamers. Ultimately, the Super NES came out on top, outselling the Genesis by a significant margin and establishing Nintendo as the leading console manufacturer of the era. The competition between the two consoles remains a notable moment in the gaming history and continues to be a topic discussion among gamers today. Yes, we're talking about it right now. What do you guys
Yeah.
think of that? Like how aggressive that is? I don't think we see a lot of that anymore. Like you don't really obviously there's an obvious competition between Sony and Xbox, but they
Mhm.
don't blatantly do these marketing campaigns. But what do you think of that? Is that just a like kind of like par for the course in the 90s where people were doing all kinds of things and didn't give a crap? Like what do you guys think of the console wars and how important it was?
Is that not against like the law? Is that not like a slander? Like
I
you
don't think
you
it's a
could do?
I don't think it's against the law. I just think, Is it a good thing to do? Is it good business practices?
Right. Yeah.
That's
a dick move. Yeah, sure.
But Sega was smart to do it because they were like, see, Nintendo was always the kind of character that Nintendo has is that they're this cartoony, family friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the 90s, and Sega's like, screw it. It's the 90s. We're edgy and cool. We're Sega. So they
Right.
really had a smart tactic there. You know, that's how it was. And Nintendo even tried to get a little bit more edgier. But, you know, Nintendo, even today, I don't think has an edgy vibe about it. Sony for sure has this like edgy thing going on. And Xbox has more of a family vibe, but also edgy. You know, and Nintendo sits in their corner and continues to be in their own lane as Nintendo forever.
Yeah, Nintendo will always be like Nintendo because of the IPs. So as long as they don't lose the IPs, which they never will, they'll always be successful and they'll always just be Nintendo. Which, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I'm not a huge Sony fan as like a company, but I'll go ahead and admit that like I think the PS5 is probably like the best if you're talking about like specs or just technology wise of the new gen consoles. But I don't think I'll ever own another PlayStation. I don't think I'll ever own another Xbox. I'm strictly Switch, like the new Nintendo console, and then the PC from here on out.
Yeah, PC Lord.
A Gamer Looks at 40 says the console wars of the 90s were once a real competition entered into the market. Sega leaned into their underdog status and got a great head start. And Will says Nintendo didn't need the edgy vibe. They got worried and started with the Play It Loud campaign, but they didn't need it. They dropped it later. By the way, I'm showing a little.
What is happening here?
I'm showing a cool. This is by Flash Jits. It's a Console Wars cartoon.
I like it.
And it's pretty funny.
Great.
Yeah. So
I never experienced the console wars as a kid. Like I don't ever remember. I mean, maybe this happened with older kids, maybe kids in like high school or middle school or something like that. But I was in elementary school when these consoles came out, and I just had both, and I played both. I played the Super Nintendo much more, but I still played both. And I never had friends that were like, "Dude, the Genesis is way better than the Super Nintendo." Or I never had friends that were like, "Oh, you played the Genesis, dude? You need to get a Super Nintendo." It was never like that for us.
The first time it became real was PS3 and 360. Really, it's when I realized that there was. But that's not even that. This war was over by then.
So Genzo in chat says, I think it's considered slander, which, yes, is against the law in advertising law. And I don't know, Genzo, I just looked it up. It says slander advertising is not against the law in general. However, it's important for advertisers to comply with relevant laws and regulations regarding advertising consumer protection. In some cases, certain advertising practices may be prohibited by law or subject to specific requirements, such as providing clear disclosure about a product's claim or prices. It's also a good idea for advertisers to consult with legal counsel or seek guidance from regulatory authorities to ensure their advertising practices comply with the laws and regulations. So you have to be, if you are doing it, you have to say like factual things. You can't lie. You know, you can't say our energy drink has X, Y, and Z and is better because of this. So yeah, I guess Genzo, you're half right that there are certain practices you have to follow in advertising. But I think in the 90s, like everything in the 90s, it was great. Like everything was fun.
Which is why Sega really leaned into the whole blast processing thing, because it was, you know, their processor was faster than the Super Nintendo's, and that was one of the things that they could actually go off of that was true about the difference in consoles. So they made this whole thing up about blast processing, and that's obviously a phrase that has stuck with gaming communities until now. We're still talking about it.
Yes, and now quickly to get into a really interesting topic that I really like, and I've talked about this many times on some of my content on TikTok and Twitter. It's the parents' confusion, consumer market confusion, why they needed to upgrade from an NES to a Super Nintendo. I'm going to play this news report real quick to give everyone a sense of what I'm talking about.
Ever this season, and one good reason, Nintendo has introduced some hot new toys. But have things gone a bit too far? This evening, Ken Shockley wraps up a special report on Video Mania.
Does this really have to cost this much? Where should the anger be directed? Not at the parents, but at the manufacturer.
So it has come to this. Therapy sessions for families whom you could call Nintendependent.
First of all, the peer pressure starts.
I feel may be exploited.
Psychologists' offices might get more crowded this holiday season. Just in time for Christmas, the Japanese toy maker Nintendo has come out with a new set of electronic video games. At $200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system, and you can't mix and match. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventures. Some of the new games look like updated takes on fairly well-known formats.
This is really funny. This guy.
In the racing game of F-Zero, you're in a futuristic race car. Oh, I guess I should watch where I'm driving instead of talking. The
He's
3D
going
effect,
the
as you
wrong
can see,
way.
is pretty good by
Like-
video game standards. It was a nice clear stretch, even if I am in reverse. Let's see if we can't turn the car around right about now. If you're a real good player, meaning you've got the skill of a 9 or 10-year-old, you can even try to jump your car. But look out, if you
Especially,
miss, the game lets you know
NASCAR
your
Heat.
status. Some parents are refusing to be taken in.
I'm going to say no, and I'm going to explain to him how people market things to make you spend more money.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market, though some game players prefer the pick.
All right, so obviously, as you can see here, and I saw in chat, No Fear says 80s hair was real winner in this. Yes.
Oh yeah, dude, that high top was legit. You see that thing?
Yes. So this was a real problem, and it's honestly interesting because we're at a time in the gaming industry where parents didn't quite understand upgrading consoles, generational upgrades, and now it's become a common practice. Obviously, it's known like, oh, there's going to be a new system coming out in 3 to 4 or 5 years. So this was a problem. Parents literally were against it, and they didn't understand why the NES game cartridges couldn't be put into a Super Nintendo. No one understood it. So what do you guys think of the market confusion? Like, that was a real problem, and the industry had to deal with that. What do you guys think of it?
I mean, as far like just speaking from my perspective, I never had to really deal with that as far as like my parents being like, wait, why don't your games work in that? Because like I said before, my parents were gamers too. So fortunately, they never had a problem with like, oh, you need a Super Nintendo game. It doesn't fit in the N64 or whatever. You know what I mean? Like they kind of knew the whole time. So it was nice. It was nice that I didn't have that issue growing up. But I don't know, you guys, or did your parents have that?
No, I don't think so. But I mean, you know, especially back then, like just the escalation of like the, I guess, strength of the hardware. It was growing so rapidly. Like you bought a computer back then, like, in 2 years, it's going to be just a big paperweight, you know?
Yeah.
So like it happens, and it was happening all the way up until like kind of recently. It's slowed down a little bit. Like my 4-year-old PC is still like a decent PC, but back in like the 2000s or 90s, that's not a thing, you know?
Yeah, and I was lucky to have parents that were sort of oblivious to what the hell they were buying me. They knew I liked video. I appreciated them because if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't be into video games because they were, and when I say oblivious, I mean, they were just like, oh, it's your birthday. You need this is your new thing. Okay. They didn't really know what the hell I was playing. Honestly, my dad, in the history of me being a gamer, he supported my games. And rest in peace, Pop. He supported my games and like bought me consoles. I only remember twice that he literally came in the room and said, "Oh, what are you playing?" And then he stood there for like 10 seconds and left. Never. 2 moments in my life I can remember my dad, and my mom just didn't know. She'd make me nachos, and I'd be like, "All right, that's great. Thanks, Mom." You know. But I had friends that literally had parents that would punish them, would take their consoles away from them, would not buy them things, would not understand purchasing. Because I skew a little older than you guys, so I think that, you know, I did witness these parents that really didn't understand, and they didn't want to support their kids playing games. One of my friends, he literally had to paint his garage before he could play games. Like, he had to spend 2 weeks, over the course of 2 weeks, to paint his parent. They slaved him in like a child law problems to do like stuff around the I don't know. It was just like the way parents acted in those days is really crazy. I do respect parents that, you know, make sure their kids do their homework and stuff and get good grades. Like, but
I will say we had a friend that he wasn't allowed any technology really. Like he had no TVs in his house or anything like that. And when he was telling us about that, I'm like, yeah, wild. What would you do when you go home? There's no video games, no TVs. Like, what do you even do?
Yeah,
You know what that was, right? Pat Scott.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
and yeah,
Remember
shout
that?
out to Genzo for sharing my dad's donation link. But I think that campaign ended, Genzo. I need to update that. But it's to support cancer research. Yizer, I think you're a cancer survivor. Is that right?
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. And shout out that in August, Retro Game Brews from the Gamers Week podcast and I are going to be bringing back our Mario Kart cancer research charity stream. So I'm sure you guys were
Sweet.
part of that last
man.
year.
Yep.
So we're
Yep.
bringing that back. So just a quick shout out on that. All right. So
You gotta not get as drunk this time.
I gotta start practicing.
and
By that I mean training my liver.
yes. And just to close out the show, I want to go through some of your favorite games. Chrono Trigger. What do you guys, tell me a little bit about this baby here? That's also really expensive. Okay.
Yeah, so I've never played Chrono Trigger, haven't gotten to it yet,
good.
but that's kind of Yizer's game.
Just look at it. No, it's so awesome, dude. All the characters are like so sick. It's just such a beautiful game. Also, the combat mechanics with the what do they call them? The X moves or whatever, where you combine two characters and they do their special together.
Yeah.
There's so many different special moves. The whole time travel, the whole story is just awesome. This fucking game is one of the best games.
Good example of 16-bit, like wonderful 16-bit graphics. Like this is a good instance of like you see all these people doing like pixel art, and a lot of it looks like Chrono Trigger. In honest opinion, But a sad part of this game, it's super expensive loose, which is sad that you have to spend $400 if you want to like buy it loose as a game. Super Mario RPG. We're gonna go
another one.
Is this your whose pick was this?
So this is definitely on his top 5, but I've played this game a ton as a kid and as an adult. Actually, I remember renting it as a kid and being super disappointed because I didn't know what RPG meant. I just thought it was a new Mario game, right? I went to Blockbuster, saw Super Mario RPG, and I'm like, sick, there's a new Mario game? No idea what RPG meant. I brought it home and I'm like, so what's happening here? Why is this not Mario?
What, a story?
Very confused.
To walk around?
Yeah. It's weird though, because I'd played Earthbound up to that point, but I just had never understood why Mario was ever in an RPG. But I gave it a chance when I got older and I liked it a lot more.
So EVO, this is one I haven't played. Can you guys tell me a little about Search of Eden?
Oh, go ahead, buddy.
This game I haven't played until we did it in season 1, right? Season 1?
I think it was
one of our first games.
Yeah.
I loved it, honestly. The controls were a little janky sometimes, but I honestly,
it's a pretty game.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I loved it. Love the concept, you know what I mean? Like evolve from a little tadpole up into whatever, like that lion neck dog thing if you wanted it, you know?
Yeah, you could use experience points to kind of change the appearance of your character and just like the functionality. You could get large jaws, or like you could get like big horns or whatever, and everything you did to your character was a little bit obviously like affected them a little bit differently, and you would need certain things for the boss that you would have to fight at the end of that level. So we have a playthrough up on our YouTube channel if you want to check it out, where I really, really struggled to take down a bee.
It was a hard fight.
It was a hard fight. But yeah, no, this game is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and just to remind everyone, I just put ! guests in chat. You can check out their Twitter and their YouTube right there. So please follow these guys and check out their other playthrough videos. Obviously, here's one that I'm connected to. I mean, Donkey Kong Country was a breakthrough in video game tech. It was amazing. This game is amazing. It still is.
100%. Whenever we talk about a game's visuals, and especially for Super Nintendo games, we can't help but bring up Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah.
It's probably the most beautiful game on the console, and I don't know really like if you can. I mean, you could debate it, I suppose, but I think you'd be wrong.
This literally blew my mind. This game, it was, and I believe that they pulled out as much from the SNES as they could to make this game work.
Yeah.
It was just, I think there's like this really cool video on YouTube that shows behind the scenes in like a 90s kind of style aesthetic about the making of this. Fantastic. Was this the first time they introduced Diddy Kong? I don't know if it was. Was it?
I believe so.
Right?
I think so. I mean, I'm not. I would say I'm far from a Donkey Kong historian, but
I need to find one for the show. That'd be interesting. But obviously easy to mention that. And here's one that's also expensive, I believe, Wild Guns.
Oh man,
this is a beautiful game. Beautiful game.
Love Wild Guns. As a person that grew up playing Super Nintendo for legitimately 20 years, I didn't think at this point in my life I'd be able to say that I could add a Super Nintendo game to like my top 10 list, and this defied all odds and made it in there. Wild Guns is amazing, and it's not even the type of game that I would typically say I would enjoy. It's a gallery shooter, which is a little bit different than like a normal like shmup, because gallery just meaning like you kind of just stay in this one screen until all the enemies are dead, rather than moving across the screen or having enemies flying at you. But this game is amazing. It's one from the podcast that if anybody's like, oh, of all the games you've played in the last year, which one would you recommend the most? It's probably Wild Guns for me, because I think that not a lot of people really have been able to experience it.
Yeah, and the couch co-op aspect too, just makes it that much better.
Hell yeah. And that's another thing that we don't have much of anymore is couch co-ops. That vibe, that nostalgic vibe of being in person with someone playing games,
For sure.
Shout out to DMC PCRT. He made it. Good job.
Hey, buddy. What's up, man?
Good to see you. And then we got some chatter here. Will says, or from what Will says, Lost in the 89 says, Donkey Kong Jr. was when Diddy Kong was introduced, but never called him Diddy Kong. But DMC says, isn't Junior actually DK in Donkey Kong Country because Cranky is the elder Kong? Well, we do need a Donkey Kong historian.
We need an expert.
I've never pretended to understand any of that, because there's Donkey Kong Jr. in Super Mario Kart, and I'm like, that's Donkey Kong Jr. from the Donkey Kong Jr. games and like on the NES? But then like, who's Donkey Kong? So I don't know. I don't know any of that lore.
Yeah, we need a DK lore person stat. Obviously, Earthbound, super fun. A terribly expensive game right now, which is sad as well. And you see me mentioning that almost all these great games are out of reach if you want to buy the original item. But obviously you can get these, I believe, on the Switch and whatnot. But
yeah, it's free to play on Switch, right?
Free to play on Switch. But, some people have a Super Nintendo and they might want to play it in the original way, and it's just too expensive. But what are your guys' memories of Earthbound? What do you guys think of this wonderful game?
Never played it. I never played it.
Oh, Kyle?
Yeah, Yizer's never played it. I got it for Christmas as a kid, and I still remember opening up the present, not expecting it to be a Super Nintendo game at all because of the huge box. And then, man, I used to just read through that strategy guide for hours whenever somebody else was
using it. It's a beautiful game.
Nintendo
Another example of a 16-bit beautiful looking game, right?
Yeah, and it's simple, you know what I mean? Like it's not too over the top, but it's colorful and it gets the job done, you know what I mean? There's no like facial expressions throughout the entire game. All the characters have a very stoic face throughout the whole thing. But one of my favorite aspects of this game is the music. Number one is so good that I own the soundtrack. It's somewhere over there. I bought the soundtrack, and that's the only video game I've ever bought the soundtrack to. I love the music for
Beautiful
it so
soundtrack.
much so that when I hear the music, it doesn't even register to me anymore that it's from a video game. It's just music that I always listen to. And the battling is so cool. I love the like the psychedelic backgrounds when you're battling enemies and stuff like that. I loved that as a kid.
Yeah, and shout out to Manny's Arcade in chat, good buddy of mine. Tried to rent it every week, and every week it was out. Well, it was definitely a popular game to find. Renting games was tough because sometimes you want to rent one on a Friday night so that you got it through the weekend.
Yeah.
So good luck trying to find this game when you were renting it back then. And then, of course, one of my favorites, and one that I actually have and I've been playing recently, is Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island, or we'll just call it Yoshi's Island. Both of you guys play this one, or whose is this?
Yizer hasn't gotten a chance to
I
play it,
don't
right?
think I've ever played this.
Yeah. This one's
think so.
notorious for the annoying baby Mario crying.
Of course.
But if you can get past that and just, I don't know, get good at the game, you don't have to worry about it, right?
But I mean, he's a baby, and if you lose him for a second, he's gonna cry. That's just the way it goes. So I actually think that just like got you to like get your mindset to like, oh God, I gotta save Mario, I gotta get him. He's crying.
For sure.
I didn't have a problem with the crying. I know a lot of people did. DMC says, one of my favorite parts of Earthbound is how relaxed the boss music was. Using PSY powers, you don't want to be stressed. Did I say that right? Yoshi's Island is amazing. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. And then finally, last game we'll talk about kind of in depth is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time.
Now, did you play this one before we did it on the show?
A very little bit. I could not, as you say, get good. So I didn't play it much.
I carried a little bit for this playthrough, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Beautiful
It's
game.
one of my,
Beautiful.
yeah,
game.
one of my all-time favorites. And actually, I don't know if you know this, but you can go to a library and you can rent games. I don't know if all libraries have video games, but the one by my house does. And we went there and we saw Shredder's Revenge for the Switch, so we rented that. And I guess we didn't rent it. We more just borrowed it because it's free. But me and my wife beat Shredder's Revenge earlier, and she's like, "Wait, is this how all the Ninja Turtles games are?" And I'm like, "Yeah, Turtles in Time is like one of my favorite games." She's like, "Oh, I'll play that one with you."
They're pretty much beat 'em up games, you know.
Yeah.
So, and I love side-scrolling beat 'em up games. I mean, there's some of my favorites like Streets of Rage and Final Fight, but the Turtles. I mean, I always loved how you throw the enemy and it kind of comes at you on the screen like that. You see that?
Yep. So cool.
Really cool little nuances that just really make me
this
happy.
This to me was the first game I had ever played where like the characters actually looked like the show.
Right.
I don't think any
definitely.
game had done this as good until South Park. Those South Park games that came out. Those South Park RPGs where it looked exactly like an episode of the show. But when I was a kid, I was like, this looks exactly like the cartoon I watch every day.
So thanks, guys, for sharing those games, too. I had to ask you guys to give me about 10 games to talk through. And a lot of those meant a lot. But every Saturday morning, I do a tweet that relates to the topic, and we're going to read some comments. I asked, do you remember the first time you played the Super Nintendo? What games did you play? I'm going to read some comments for us. I put, and you could see it's Super Mario Bros. All-Stars right there. That's actually my Orion 9-inch CRT television with DVD built in with my actual Super Nintendo. I absolutely love this television, by the way. It's a beautiful TV. Pete Guama says, Street Fighter 2, always at my neighbor's house. Unfortunately, I never owned a Super Nintendo, too expensive at the time. Vintage Dude says, Super Mario World at demo kiosks at Toy Works on launch breaks from my job. Love that.
Nice.
Let's see. Retire says, parents wouldn't buy it, only had NES, got Genesis later with my own money. Well, that wasn't anything about the Super Nintendo. Jeremiah says, Super Mario World on display in Kmart. The buttons and the button layouts were different from the NES controller, so I spin jump to my death. When I finally got my Super Nintendo for Christmas, I couldn't secure Super Mario World as it was sold out and hard to find, so I got mine with Turtles in Time. Good alternative.
Nice.
Nintendo Therapy says Super Mario World. And I actually do remember my grandparents surprising me with the system and putting it on. Technically, I probably played it in a store display before that, but that was the first one that was mine. And obviously, there's lots of comments today, so a lot of love around here. Yes, it has 2K, said Super Mario World. It came with the bundle at Sam's Club. Love the references to the places that these people bought them and played them in kiosks and stuff. So Christmas Day, Big Mick says, when I was gifted the system and the first game was Super Mario World, it was he capitalized my, present that I didn't need to share with my sister. We had to share our NES. Super NES was mine. Super Mario World, lots, obviously, guys, we see the influence Super Mario World had on people.
Yeah.
Super Mario World. First time played the Super NES was my old girlfriend's house. It was years ago. First three was Super Mario World, Congo's Caper, and Donkey Kong Country. I got some gifts here. We got F-Zero. Goof Troop. Call out right there. Street Fighter 2, a couple of those. This gentleman, Gus, showed us his cartridge of Super Mario World. I see nothing. Mostly, I got a Sim City here, which is very good on the Super Nintendo.
Oh, nice.
Super Mario World, Pilot Wings, which we didn't talk about, definitely needs to be mentioned. Fun game to play.
I've never played it.
Me either.
Oh, you guys got to do that for a show. That would be fun.
Yeah, we gotta get that one on there.
That was a fun one. It really introduced. It was a really cool game that came with that you bought as a launch title that really introduced you to the Super Nintendo. It's quite fun. More Super Mario World, a lot of Street Fighter, actually. We didn't talk about Street Fighter. More Street Fighter, Donkey Kong, F-Zero, Super Mario World. Last one I'll read is Commodore Spence says, honestly, it feels like the first Super Nintendo I actually sat down at to play was Street Fighter 2. And then I got my Super NES a couple of months later. And the first game I played on the Super Nintendo was Krusty's Funhouse. Ooh, we didn't talk about
Love
this.
that game, actually, as a kid.
Okay, I'm going to read one more just because this guy put, let's see, he's got a picture of, yes, it was exactly last year, did successfully revive the SFC. Feels like invented a fire, played Super Mario RPG a bit just for it to die permanently because my crappy soldering skills. Oh, so he got one. Okay, he's showing us his crappy soldering skills. Oh, that's cool. You see, this is the love. You see all these comments? This is the love. The love is real. And really, really appreciate everyone that's commented right here. And yeah, guys, we've made it to the end of the show. What do you think of that? Did you guys have fun with me?
Yeah, I had a great time.
Dude, yeah.
Thank you so much for having us on. Really appreciate it.
Of course. And before I go, why don't you guys give me the 1-2 about what you guys do again, just to let everyone know. And everyone in chat, you could see we have their Twitter and their YouTube available. But give us tell us a little about what do we got ahead in the Reliving Retro world.
So we're both a podcast and a show. And we're over on YouTube primarily. However, we are also on Spotify if you want to just listen. Some people prefer to just listen to podcasts, which is totally cool. You can go check that out over on Spotify. If you want to watch our faces talk while we talk, then you can go over to YouTube, Reliving Retro, same name. And we have all of our episodes there. Basically, what we do is we play a new game at random every single week. We invite a guest on, usually a retro gaming content creator of some sort, to talk to us about the game that we played for that week. And we are currently on a 2-week break, I guess, as we finish up season 4. And we're going to be playing Shadowrun on the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis with the guys from Drink a Beer, Play a Game.
You know what?
Yeah.
I love it. Anything else?
We have the SNES Quest that just started.
Yes.
So there's that if you want to check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, where we're trying to fund a Super Nintendo collection out of zero monies, essentially, where we buy some retro games and then we sell them and then we use the profits to fund the collection.
Okay, well, I just got I forgot we should play one round of Muffins on Stream, which is the game that we have created, although I'm having trouble connecting it for some reason. Huh. That sucks. Let's try this again. There we go. All right, everyone. So this is Muffins on Stream. It's a little bit of a game that we play. I can give away a game at the end. If you do ! Join in chat, you can all join in and play one round against the Bear Claw King. And it's a last man standing. So whoever is the last man, woman, whatever, will win a game, and I'll figure out what game that is. So we're going to do one round, do ! Join in chat to join into the match. You become a muffin right there, and the Bear Claw is going to try to kill you. Now, what's really cool also that you should note is you're going to have commands, okay? So you do ! Jump, ! Zoom. If you do ! Jump, you'll jump. You could do zoom to try to escape. You could do a cover where you put a glass cover on yourself. And then you could do a shield as well. So remember, ! Join. I'm going to do a giveaway. I don't know what the hell I'm going to give you, but we'll figure it out. We'll do one round here. And just so you know, this game is available on Steam. It's a game that we have developed. I'm going to give everyone 4 lives. Okay, 4 lives. Here we go. Everyone in. I'll give it a few more seconds. We got a good amount of people today. I love it, love it, love it. Anyone else want to join? ! Join in chat. We got a bunch today. All right. You guys ready to see who the last muffin cupcake standing is? Let's do this. Sure. Let's do this. All right, here we go. The Bear Claw King is about to destroy you all. Remember, you could do ! Cover, wall to protect yourself. Oh! Manny.
I'm rooting against Nightbot.
Nightbot joins a lot. Oh, no one's died yet. Don't let the Bear Claw. Oh, watch out, everyone.
Uh-oh.
We got 4 lives, so it's going to go for a little bit. You got 4 lives. We got people work. Oh, we got our first death. Nightbot is dead. Good.
Yes.
Who cares about Nightbot? Oh, and Bear Claw shocks a bunch of people. Let's see who else he's going to take down. We got people working in chat. They're trying to protect themselves with shields and covers. No one. Oh, we just lost a couple people. Genzo is out. No Fear is dead. Who's it going to be? Who is going to be the last cupcake standing? Let's see. Here we go. It's down to what? We got 3 people. Yeah, we just lost another one. Manny's Arcade is out. No, we're down to 3. We got DMC, Reliving Retro, and Lost in the 80s. And Will is out. He's dead. Now it's down to our guest hosts and DMC CP. God, I always.
Oh no.
DMC wins.
DMC wins.
Congratulations, DMC.
PCRT.
You are the greatest person in the world. You win today. That said, we'll end the stream on that, guys. Really, again, I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun today. And that said, we will be back next week, actually. Whether we have a guest or not, I don't remember. But, hey, we always figured it out. But I really had a great time with you guys. Really appreciate it. Remember, everyone, one more time in chat, exclamation guests in chat. Here's all their info. Also, very much thank you to everyone on VOD who's watched the show after. If you want to come out and hang out with us on live shows, 8 a.m., 11 Eastern on Saturday mornings. This is Cafe BTW, Gaming Morning Podcast. One more thing I want to say is we only get one shot at this, so you might as well be nice to people. Until next time, I'm Andy, and that's Reliving Retro, and that's it. Until next time.
Guys. See ya. Thank you.
We'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.
See ya.